Hey everyone, sorry about the darkness, but it's Aman again, entrepreneur based in Tokyo. I'm currently visiting New Delhi, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how much I spend as an entrepreneur, a single entrepreneur living in Tokyo, in Japan. Yeah. So naturally, this can go up or down, but let's. Before I even begin to talk about how much I spend, I would set some ground rules that you can take away, right? So in Tokyo, and I'll quote all prices in yen, right? If you have 100,000 yen a month in expendable income in Tokyo, what you would get is quite a challenging life. You would be probably having like a place where you share a room with somebody, or your room would be your apartment or whatever would be out in the quite far from central Tokyo, right? And you would have a long commute time, like a really long one. Then you wouldn't be eating much, or you'd be eating like maybe 2 meals a day and making it like not eating all that much, and you'd basically be having very little if at all disposable income, but you would survive in Tokyo. Okay, you could survive in Tokyo on 100k. You'd barely be making it, but you wouldn't be dying, and you would be able to accomplish what you came to accomplish, right? Unless that's if you go really cheap as an entrepreneur, and you're like, I just need to be in the city and go out and hustle all day, and I don't care about living where I live, or I don't care about luxury of any kind. I just want to work really hard and just get by, and the fortunes will favor me. 100k will get you in the door, all right? Now, as soon as you go up to 130,000 yen a month, you will suddenly have a little more breathing space. And I'm sorry, is it dark? Yeah, it's probably really dark. You'll certainly have a lot of breathing space. And what time is it? Yeah. And you would have a slightly nicer room, and you would be eating a little better, healthier food, right? And you will have a little more disposable income to go out, to a restaurant once in a while, right? But you would probably be cooking most of your meals, I think, right? But at this price, and if you're here in Tokyo for a sustained period, 130 will be like, okay, livable. I can live like this for a while, right? And of course, I'll get to the specifics later. Now, as you go up from 130 above, like 150, now you're comfortable. You have another 20k a month. You're still not going out all the time and knocking yourself out over drinks and stuff and partying a lot, but you're making a livable space for yourself in Tokyo. And then of course, anything above that, I would say, is gravy, right? Like, as entrepreneurs, we love nice things because that's what we work for in a way, so we can somehow afford them someday. Although that's not the only motivation, but and now this is really what I described to you is still quite frugal compared to most people, right? But if you're a normal person having a normal life, this might not apply to you if you're not the frugal type, but as an entrepreneur you should be. So those would be my numbers. Now let's get into specifics. Rent. I would say that if you have around 75,000 yen a month for accommodation, then you could get a room for yourself in a share house, right? It would be more or less around a little far from central Tokyo, but like very accessible, in a very accessible place in Tokyo. And you would be living with other people, so that has some issues. But if you go a little further from Tokyo, a little bit, it's not too much, you could still get your own room, in a small apartment, like I don't know, somewhere closer to Chiba, for example, or a little north, past the river, and you can have your own apartment as well, right? And 75k would get you in the door, and then like 50k. There's places where you have a 50k, rent apartment. There's some other expenses like while you're signing the contract, and if you're getting out, and then you have expenses for like furnishing the room. You'll probably want some basic furniture for yourself, right? That's going to cost extra, but you could get that off Facebook Marketplace or IKEA, whatever you like, right? That's up to you how much you spend. So yeah, I would say 75k is like should get you in the door reasonably. And then if you're spending less than that, when I talked about the 100k monthly budget, then you would be living in a shared room probably, or you'd be sleeping in the park or something. I don't know. In which case you probably wouldn't be allowed into Japan for the most part, unless you become unlucky while you're in Tokyo, right? But yeah, you could do with less than 75. Just other costs in terms of things always come around, right? But anyway, that's rent. I would say 70 to 100k is a good approximation for how much you would be spending as a cheap, frugal entrepreneur. Now the next, I am somebody who doesn't like luxury. Like I prefer simple living quarters, and I actually like that because it keeps my brain sharp and it keeps me motivated to work and not be distracted. But then that's just my style. I'm just talking about the basics, right? For food, so a plate of food, okay, now it depends if you're a vegetarian or not. Most of you probably aren't. I am plant-based and I tend to cook at home a lot. If you're an omnivore, if you eat anything you like, then there's some good news, because if you go and get a bento, like a lunch set, whatever, from a supermarket, you would be spending like 500 to 700, let's say 800 yen if you're really like eating a sizable amount. So 500 to 800 yen in a good meal, right? Like a good, big, very decent lunch. Unless you're like, I don't know, a 6'5" American football player, right? I don't care. I don't know about that. But like, I'm not talking about normal people, right? Normal sized people. So, because portions in Japan are small compared to America, right? That's just a fact. So yeah, I would say 500 to 800 yen for a decent meal. And then, so you could spend like 1500 yen a day, and that, some for cooking and some for like, a supermarket meal or something like that, an onigiri, whatever. And that should be reasonably like, keep you alive and keep you basically fed and not like losing all your weight, while in Tokyo per day, on a per day basis. But I would budget like about up to 1500 to 2000, if let's say 1500 to 2500, depending on how big you are, whatever, right? for food. So that's like what, 45,000 yen a month. I know somebody personally, a girl who, I mean, she's a small one, right? She's not that tall, and she spends about 45K a month, right? So I know a person who literally spends that much, right? And she's okay. But if you're a guy and you're like a bigger eater, you might spend more, right? So we've covered rent and we've covered food. Now there are some other expenses. One of big one would be commute, right? And commute would be, there's a few. Okay, let's talk about phone bill quickly. If you could get a phone, I would budget about 3,000 yen, give or take, for your phone. Okay, phone and internet and everything. There's that. And by the way, when I talked about accommodation, I included utilities and shit, right? In that 70 to 100K for basic living quarters. All right, then if you, basic living quarters basically means just a bed and a table maybe, right? So there's that. Now the next thing would be, other expenses, like you'll have health insurance. It could be like 3,000 ish a month, for the average person, I would say, depending on your income, of course. And it could be up higher or slightly lower as well, right? But I would say is about average. And you'll have to pay that unless your company does, which I don't know about, because I work for myself. And okay, entertainment and hobbies. Sorry, no, let's talk about commute first, right? So a train ticket, an A to Z subway ticket costs, like a one way, costs you 178 to 210 yen, because there's different lines on the Tokyo subway, so it kind of varies a little bit for one way, right? But you can also get a commuter pass, and you can plan it around so that you have unlimited trips in a month for during the duration of that, between two certain stations you can have unlimited trips along certain lines. If you go outside those lines and get out of the station, you will pay extra. Of course, you will be charged extra, but basically, you can look it up, commuter pass in Tokyo, and that would cost you, I would say, if you're on the same line, it might cost you let's say 10K ish, right? For me, it's cost around that much per month, and it could go up to 15K per month if you do it on a monthly basis. You could also pay lower if you pay for several months in advance, like 3 months in advance or 6 months in advance, right? I don't do that. And so that's 10 to 15K, I would say, or let's say 8 to 15K would be your commute cost if you're commuting every single day, right? And that's about it. You should keep a little more, budget, like let's say 5K for daily living essentials. I don't know, toilet paper, whatever. Stuff around the house basically. But you can get those at the dollar, like the Daiso, the 100 yen store, pretty cheaply. And I think that covers most of the essentials, right? And in general, I would say about Tokyo is that there's many living classes within Tokyo, and if you are somebody who loves to party, who loves entertainment, who loves to do stuff and try stuff, Tokyo has more than what you can ever handle, right? And if you have no money, you are barely scraping by, there's still, you know, an opportunity for you in the city. Yeah, because there are students who live in Tokyo, right, and they don't make much money, but they're able to get by somehow, right? You could get a baito for yourself. I've never done that, but even if you don't speak any English, any Japanese, you could probably get a baito in some restaurant. You know, for example, I know somebody who works in a Mexican restaurant, and you know, this person relies on the other staff for the Japanese speaking guests, but otherwise, you know, this person just handles everything, all their tasks on their own. So yeah, you need to speak Japanese necessarily to get a very simple, low wage part-time job in Tokyo. Because I know so many people who go to, you know, language school. They end up working at some cafe or some restaurant, you know, in the back in the kitchen. Yeah, or working cleaning or something like that, you know. So I've never been there, you know, but just if that's something that you need to resort to, that might help, right? But yeah, hope this video helps, and let me know if you have any more questions.